Last week, I interviewed Royce from Roycycled Treasures and discussed her creative journey. If you've always wanted to hear how Roycycled decoupage paper was created, this is your episode. It really amazes me hearing the different paths each of these creators take to get where they are today. And I loved hearing about Royce's journey, and you guys definitely need to go take a listen to that episode. She is the most inspiring individual, and I know you guys are going to absolutely love her. Now, in this week's episode, I am diving into my love of thrifting and how this was instilled in me at a very young age. I thrifted, repurposed, and reused items even before it was the cool thing to do. So let's talk about how I went from being completely embarrassed as a young child to loving it as an adult.
Welcome to the Rescued and Upcycled podcast with weekly inspiration, tips on trying new techniques, and overall, real talk about owning your own DIY business. Now here's your host, Sonnet Ullenbrock.
Welcome back to Rescued and Upcycled. I'm your host, Sonnet Ullenbrock. I want to thank you all for joining me today. I cannot believe this is episode 12. Wow, you guys. Time sure does fly by when you're having fun. I am absolutely amazed that this is episode 12, and I'm probably going to be amazed every single week as I tape my next episode. This has been an absolute dream of mine to create my own podcast, and it is like really happening. So I appreciate the fact that you guys have been following along or listening along with each week and taking the time to, listen to the interviews and my perspectives on all things, regarding my business. In today's episode, I am diving into a topic that I absolutely love. Yes, thrifting. You may think that I've always loved to go thrifting, but that is not the case, you guys. Looking back, I honestly can laugh because I cannot believe that I used to not like thrifting. But I was completely mortified as a child to even think about being caught at a thrift store. I just remember my mom we'd be driving along and she'd be like, "Oh, let's go. There's a thrift store. We're going to pull in." And I'm like, "No, bring me home. Bring me home." And she's like, "No, you can come to the thrift store. I want to show you some clothes," or whatever she was at the moment looking for. And we'd pull in, and I remember laying down on the seat thinking, "Oh, dear Lord, somebody is going to see me. Somebody is going to see me pulling into this thrift store. I better get out of this car and run as fast as I can to get inside so no one sees me." And hello, like if they were there, if they saw you, then most likely they were at the thrift store too, right? I just laugh thinking about that and how mortified I was and how I acted. And now it's like, I'm at the thrift store. Let's videotape. And back then it was just so different. Now, my mom would always find the best things for all of us kids to wear just by hitting up the local thrift stores. And I look back and I think about like, she always made sure we had the name brand clothes and everything was top notch. And at that time, I kept thinking, as a child, I was always thinking like, "Oh my gosh, people are going to know that I'm wearing something thrifted." But really, they had no clue, you guys. And I would get just as many compliments for everything I was wearing as they would receive wearing brand new clothes. And I just remember thinking, I want to go to all the new stores, and get all the best stuff. And, you know, the kids on the playground playing hard, they would tear their jeans or rip their shirts or spill on it. And it would be like these totally high end, expensive pieces. And they would have no regard for it. They would be, if that would have been me, I would have been crying my eyes out had I known that I had just tore my most expensive pair of jeans or spilled an entire can of paint on myself. And I should talk now, you guys, because I'm always spilling paint on myself. But all my items too are thrifted these days. So it just makes me laugh looking back. As I was writing the outline of this and I was trying to like remember like how like go back and remember all the thoughts and feels of thrifting as a child, and it just brought back so many of these memories, and I'm like, oh, it's crazy to think, how things have changed. So, a little backstory. Growing up was very different for our family. My parents were extremely young when they had me, right out of high school, you guys. So, this is like unheard of. You don't hear about, high school sweethearts sticking it out, really standing the test of time. And I want to give a big shout out to my parents, going through the ups and downs of life and a marriage. There are so many things. And, so many times, you never hear of high school sweethearts still sticking together this long. So, a big shout out to my mom and dad for definitely, working through all the things that life has tossed at them. But really, when they were first starting off, you guys, they were starting with basically nothing. They received a lot of hand me downs from my grandparents who helped them out. Um, but they had to really work their butts off to create the life that they have now and to give us like the three kids, everything that we, like instill all these values in us and, teach us all the things. And I just think, like starting off that young, they were teenagers and they were like living life. It wasn't like they went to college. So I just give them so much credit for everything that they went through and, getting into the workforce and working up in both companies that they ended up retiring at, and giving us, giving us food on the table, clothes, like clothes on our back. And I just appreciate that so much. And it means so much to me. So I just think that they they just really were frugal, they thrifted items, and they always were looking for good deals whenever they could, and that all really made each and every one of us appreciate what we have and, had back then and even have today. One thing that I just have to mention, and I'm just slightly confused about, is how things have changed so drastically from back then to how it is today. And it is, I feel like so many young adults are starting off these days, and they seem to have everything right away. Like there is no working for it, or maybe they do, and I am not seeing how they're working for it because I see like how the kids are with like the teenagers like hang out with my daughter and things like that. But like the cost of living has skyrocketed, but yet they are all living in brand new homes right after college, or getting these like high end apartments, driving expensive cars, wearing expensive clothing. Are these the new hand-me-downs? I know that we are living in a completely different time, but sometimes I question, where is all this money coming from? We have good jobs, my husband and we love having nice things too, but we definitely live within our means. And maybe this is the frugal side of me talking, but the real question is, how is everyone paying for all these things? I just it confuses me, and I maybe again, it must be the frugal side of me talking. That's all I have to say. But what was instilled in me is that if I wanted something, I had to work hard for it. I had to work hard to get what I wanted in life. I wasn't going to rack up credit card debt just to buy something. I just feel that this was a blessing that my parents gave me and instilled in me. So looking back, I think that there were so many struggles as a child, like that I dealt with. I wanted to always, I'm like, I always was like, I just wish my parents were rich. I just wish they were rich. Then I wouldn't have to go thrifting. And really looking back at it, I am so happy and feel so blessed that we started off where we did, because I honestly probably would not be the person I am today without that. So, um, it's amazing like what you wish for or what you hope for as a child. And now looking back, it's like am so thankful that wasn't my life. So, but because of all of the things that happened, during my childhood, it caused me to become very frugal. And yes, did I want nice things? Yes, absolutely. But I didn't want to pay for an arm and a leg for any of these items. And so as I, got out on my own, and I very quickly realized that many other people feel the complete opposite that I do. They don't mind buying all the things, and they get tired of them and then donate these things. And then I get to go thrifting and find all the things that I'm looking for while I'm out thrifting. It's amazing. Like I put out into the universe, like I am looking for I just remember one time I wanted this sweater. This is the funniest story. We were gonna get our photos taken, like family photos, and I was like Googling, or I was on Pinterest actually, and I was looking for different family photos and how like outfits to wear. I was trying to coordinate our outfits, and this whole family had this look, and I'm like, I want that sweater. I want that sweater that lady has on. But obviously in this Pinterest photo, it never linked back to where the sweater was from. And I'm like, okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to Goodwill, and I am going to try to find a sweater very similar to that look and feel. And I remember like going through the racks, and all of a sudden I'm like, no way. It was the sweater, you guys. Like the exact same sweater that she had on in that photo, I ended up finding. And I was like, see, I don't need to spend, and it was only like 5.99. So I kind of laugh about it. It was one of my, very favorite sweaters as well, and I kept wearing it after, but it makes me laugh because you can always find things thrifting, or if you have a vision, you can find something very similar. So, I just don't have that same buy expensive things and then toss them when I'm over them attitude. I honestly become attached to some things that I thrift, that I find on the roadside. Um, I don't understand why I get attached to it, but now that I do this for a living, though, like I thrift, upcycle, and repurpose, it can be very hard for me to let some of these items go. I don't know why. Like I'm like, I want to keep this. And like I say this on my videos to you guys after I upcycle something and I get really attached to it, and I'm like, I really want to keep this for myself. And my daughter is always telling me, you can't keep everything, mom. We don't live in a big enough home, which is so true. So we live in a Cape Cod. So it is not that like open layout of the home. It's very, like just smaller rooms. It's very cozy. It has a lot of character. I love it. But some days I wish that I had like a big open expansed house that I could decorate completely different. So I really love like big chunky furniture, and I could never have that because there's just not enough room for the big chunky furniture. So sometimes I do though hold on to a few pieces for a minimal amount of time, and then enjoy it before it then goes into my booth, and then somebody else can enjoy it too. So that has been a struggle of like buying and reselling, is that sometimes I become attached to too many things. So I don't know if that happens to you as well, but I just sometimes as I'm like upcycling and creating, it almost like retains like my style, I guess is a good way to put it. So, but on the flip side too, I realized very early on if I couldn't find something that I wanted, that was the exact color I wanted, or in the best shape, I could very easily change that item with just a bit of upcycling and DIYing. So, I think that's what really started creating my love of upcycling is that I started doing it for myself. I could just very easily change it with a bit of paint, or, like sanding or whatever I needed to do to it. And as I dove into the upcycling world, I realized there were so many other techniques that now I am loving even further. But I just have a true love of antiques and vintage items. And I love repurposing and I love to collect vintage items, especially like garden related items. If you guys know, I love McCoy pottery. I love old galvanized containers and watering cans and like the nozzles, those old brass nozzles. I love them. I love all of like anything garden related. I'm very attached to that because I love gardening. So I have a very hard time when I find those items to like resell. Most of the time, all those pieces end up in my collection. So my collection is getting a little out of control, but that's okay. Um, it's what I love and it's something that I'm going to continue to collect. Now, when I first bought my home, you guys, I decorated with all thrifted things. Obviously, I did purchase like my new couch and love seat, but everything else I thrifted. I just feel like it adds so much character to your home. And it's just not that like cookie cutter look that you find when you go to a local store. And don't get me wrong, if that is the look you're going for, absolutely go for it. Kudos to you. But I just think that you can have such an eclectic, unique look by purchasing items at the thrift store and curating your own look, creating your own vignettes within your home. And it just can look so different and you can stand out. But I know that many people may not have the exact eye to curate it all and they go to like the local like Target and they pick out all the items there or they like going to IKEA and shopping there. But what I have found is when you purchase an old dresser or any old furniture, it just stands the test of time, you guys. Like I think about like old vintage buffets, dressers, the tables. It was just made to really hold up, and you don't get that these days. Like that just is not like the stuff that you guys are buying now is pressed board dressers. Everything is pressed board, and if you have to screw it together, it is not like the old school furniture that is real wood and dovetailed and all that good stuff. You just something that like those pieces can be like 100 years old, where the pieces from IKEA, they're going to last months, maybe a year, and then it's going to fall apart, and then you're going to bring it to the landfill because there's not going to be any upcycling that. So, um, but anyways, that's my little take on thrifting and why I feel so passionate about upcycling and repurposing, because our landfills are filling up. And we don't want to fill it up with the good stuff because there are so many good pieces out there. But my thrifting career started solely off, like I said, just solely for my own personal items, and now has like grown into a full-fledged business where I go thrifting to rescue these pieces, upcycle them, and repurpose. And I really love that I'm finding these items and really giving them new life. And I just feel so strongly about that, like really saving items from the landfill. I say it often when I am at the Goodwill bins, and people don't realize like that is the last hope for those items. So if I do not thrift them, they are going to the landfill. They're going to go to the dump. And even like when people are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that you are doing that to that piece. Well, it was actually on its last life. I'm taking it, I'm giving it new life now. And somebody could decorate with it. And I'm putting it in my booth or I'm using it for my own purposes. So really, I'm saving one piece at a time from the landfill. I just hope that everybody starts doing that, like thinking twice about, whether if they throw it away or, at least donate it. I do appreciate the fact that people are donating items to at least have somebody else repurpose. Or if they're on the curb and they know that somebody's going to drive by and grab it before the garbage man. So, I appreciate that fact that, people are doing that rather than just bringing it to the landfill or bringing it to the dump, and then there's no way that any of us could repurpose. But when I first started doing this, I almost felt like I had to rescue everything. I was on a mission. Like, if the piece had any life left for a while, you guys, I was grabbing everything. I was out of control. I was an out of control thrifter. And my inventory became out of control because of that. Do you guys ever feel like that where you just feel like, this is great. This is a great piece. I'm going to grab it. And you have an idea of what you're going to do with it. And then you bring it home and you don't remember, or it gets put somewhere and you don't even remember that you thrifted it. That is how out of control my thrifting became. I'm going to be tackling this topic in a couple weeks, how I became a picky thrifter and regained control over my inventory, which I used to call my hoard. Now, I have to laugh about this because it took a lot. And I am going to do an entire podcast episode on this because it was a huge undertaking to regain control over my inventory and really discover how to become a picky thrifter. So, in a couple weeks, watch for that episode. Um, but overall, you guys, why do I love thrifting? Well, obviously, the thrill of the hunt. Every time I get to the front of a thrift store and I start walking through those doors, I am not lying when I say that I get excited about what is inside. What am I going to find? What has somebody given me, like a where I can, grab it and give it a second life. That is really why I love it now. And I think that there's just so many different fun pieces, like, at each of the different thrift stores. The one funny thing is one day I was leaving and a gal walks up and goes, "Oh, you were here? I probably shouldn't even go inside because you got all the good stuff." And it's amazing because some days something catches my eye and I grab it. And then other days I like miss the piece. I miss it completely. And how I know this is that I have been doing a lot of video recording where I record what at the thrift stores as I'm thrifting. And I go back and when I'm editing these videos, I'm like, oh my Lord, you passed that up. How did you miss that? I mean, there are things that I completely miss because sometimes the shelves are so jam packed. You do miss stuff. So keep that in mind that, even though you see somebody else has been there, there is probably still a ton of good stuff in that thrift store for you because I may be looking for something completely different than what you're looking for, or I just missed it completely. So always keep that in mind. Um, but I really couldn't see myself not thrifting ever, you guys. I'd pick thrifting over going to any big box store any day. And I think about that like my daughter's always like, "You want to go to the mall?" I'm like, "No, I'd rather go to a thrift store. There's so many unique pieces at a thrift store. And yeah, I think too, sometimes like even the struggles of finding a dress at a regular big box store and going from this store to that store, or even online, exactly what I want. Sometimes it's just, I think it's a lot more fun going to a thrift store and seeing what they have. Plus, it's probably a whole lot cheaper. I know that like when I go on my Mexican trips that we always go on in the winter, I always thrift all my dresses and I find some of the best stuff, you guys. And I would never change that for the world. I mean, it's so fun. Now, like I mentioned earlier, when I was younger, I really wanted to be rich and have all the things and wanted my parents to have all the things. And um, if that would have happened, like I mentioned earlier, I would not be the person that I am today. Personally, I feel so thankful that our family started off the way that we did, and I was taught how to value and really appreciate an item, and take a look at a piece and think like, what could it be? What can I do to it? And I just love to say that I'm a thrifter who rescues and upcycles, and I wouldn't want it any other way. So this episode was pretty short and sweet, but I hope you enjoyed it and saw a little insight into how thrifting was instilled in me and why I continue to thrift. It was, has honestly been or become second nature. I'd rather go thrifting than, like I said, go shopping at a big box store. So, you guys, it really is the thrill of the hunt. So, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And, next week I am doing another interview. We are interviewing my good friend Tara from the Reclaimed Ranch. We are going to talk about how she has turned thrifting into a small business. And then she created her YouTube channel to showcase all her beautiful upcycles. She has become one of my really great friends, and I know you guys are going to absolutely love her. If you guys are listening on any of the podcast platforms, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you guys don't miss out on an episode. And if you are watching this episode on YouTube, remember you guys can also find me over on Instagram and Facebook at Sonnet's Garden Blooms, where I will post sneak peeks of upcoming episodes. And I just post a lot of, just a lot more content over there in general. But I do hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, and we are going to see you next week. Bye.